everyone, it's Chef Julie, and I'm here to share a recipe with you that is super fun to make with your kids and will fill your kitchen and your whole house with the delicious smell of fresh baked bread. There's nothing like it. I want to say hello to my cameraman, Gabriel, and thank him for his wonderful attitude in helping me today. Gabe says hi. All right, so in John 6:35, it says, "Then Jesus declared, 'I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty.'" And there's lots more Bible verses about bread in the Bible. Since flour has a tendency to settle and get really compacted together, we want to kind of aerate it or fluff it a little bit. So I just usually take my measuring cup and I just kind of pick it up and drop it a few times and get it a little bit fluffy. And then I'm just gonna scoop it and try not to go below where I've aerated it. And then I just take my finger and scoop off the top. And you might want to go one way and then the other all the way to make sure you've completely covered your area. So there's my first cup of flour. And I do a little fluff each time I take a scoop. There's my second cup. And we're going to need just a little bit of flour later on the counter when it comes time to knead the dough. There's my third cup. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get my pan ready. Now for this recipe, you can either use two smaller mini loaf pans, but I'm gonna just make it in one big loaf pan. I'm gonna spray it with some oil. There it goes, okay. And I always like to do that over the sink to save a little mess. And now we're ready to start our ingredients in the bag. Alrighty, so the first thing we want is 1 of our cups of flour. And we want 3 tablespoons of sugar, which I already measured. All right. And then we want to add our yeast, just a little packet of yeast already measured out for you. You don't want to add the salt yet because that might mess up the yeast. That reacts badly with the yeast before it gets bubbly. And we want warm water. Now, a lot of recipes will just say warm water and they don't tell you exactly how hot to make it. But if you want to take its temperature and have the correct temperature of water, I already measured my cup of water. And when you measure liquids, remember that you have to get all the way down to eye level and make sure that you have the right amount. Because if you just look at it from above, then you might, your eyes might fool you. So what you want is your water to be around 105 to 110 degrees. Okay, so that is right at 110 degrees, so that's good. All right, now because the yeast likes the sugar, and I know some of you might not want to put any sugar at all in your bread, but the yeast actually, I believe the yeast kind of needs that to eat so that it can do its thing and get bubbly and make your bread rise. So it does need a little bit of food. And the sugar provides that, and the warm water provides that. So you don't want your water too hot because the yeast doesn't like that. You don't want it too cool because it needs to have a little bit of warmth. So we're going to mix that up, our flour and sugar and yeast with some warm water. You can feel that it's a little bit warm, but it's not too hot. Definitely won't be too hot for your kids to touch the bag. And I'm just gonna squish it and squish and squish. And then we're gonna let this sit for 10 minutes and I will pause the video. And when we're done, before we pause, I want Gabriel to take a close-up of it so that you have a before and after picture of how it's supposed to look. So I'm gonna lay that on the counter and Gabriel's gonna do, you can see it's already forming a few bubbles, so that means my yeast is good. And when we come back in 10 minutes, you should see a lot more bubbles than that. Hi kids, we're back. Now our dough so far, our yeast mixture has sat for 10 minutes now. So now you can see the difference and all the bubbles that it has now. And that means our yeast is happy and that it's going to do its job of making our bread be nice and fluffy. Okay, so next we're going to add the next 3 ingredients. All right, we can smell that yeasty mixture. It smells like it's going to be bread sometime soon. We're going to add another cup of flour and a little bit of salt. That's I think 1.5 teaspoons of salt and 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I think you can use any kind of oil. I even thought about using melted butter, but since most of the recipes I saw said oil, I decided not to experiment with that at this point. All right, so we've got those in there, and we're going to squish those ingredients around. And it's still going to be very liquid because we still have 1 more cup of flour to add. But while it's nice and liquid, we want to be able to really get these ingredients mixed in well. All right. And in between, you know, when you add ingredients and start squishing, you just want to absolutely make sure that your bag is sealed well. So if your kids need you to double check that before they start squishing, that would be good, because otherwise you might lose some of your good dough. And you're going to want to eat it all. Okay, so that's mixed around a bit. Now we're going to add our last cup of flour in there. And once we get that mixed, then we're going to put a little bit of flour down on our countertop, and I've already cleaned my countertop. See that we're ready for, well, it has a little flour on it, but that's what we need. Okay, so we're mixing this last bit. All right, and you can see that it's starting to stick together. Well, I don't know if you can see that yet. But it's not so much liquid anymore. It's starting to hold together like dough, because it is. All right. So I think we've mixed that together enough. All right. We're going to add a little bit of flour to our countertop to keep it from sticking. I guess I'll leave that in there. Now we're going to take our bread. And I'm just going to turn my bag inside out so I can get all that dough nice and easy. And you can see that most of it is starting to stick together really nicely. But now is the time for hands-on messy time. So again, make sure that your hands are clean. And this part might make your kids a little tired, especially if they're younger, or if they've been just playing video games too much all summer. They might lack a little strength. So you could make this kneading part, you could make this part a game and maybe time it for like a minute. And maybe you could help them. You could have them knead for a minute and then you could do it for a minute. Or if you have more than one child helping you, then maybe they can take turns for a minute each or something, or 2 minutes. So you can see that even now, as I'm getting all these little bits and pieces together, and I'm getting them all in, and I'm kind of folding it in on itself, and then I squish it. And this is how I like to knead bread dough. I'm certainly not an expert, but I've made it a little bit. All right. And we're gonna need to knead it for 5 to 8 minutes, which can be, like I said, can be a little bit long for some of the younger kids. So we're gonna pause the video, but in a minute, and you want to set a timer. And you might need to add a little flour here and there if it gets too sticky. Spread that out, and then just keep pushing at it. Push, bring it forward toward me and push it out. And then I like to turn it around and get it from all sides. bring it forward and push it out. And then I turned it again, bring this forward and push it away. Bring it forward and push it away. And as you knead for that 5 to 8 minutes, you're gonna see your dough become smoother and kind of elastic and have that nice consistency that we want. Okay, let's pause our video and we will be back in 5 minutes. Hi, we're back, and I've been kneading this dough for about 5 minutes, probably a little bit more than that. And one tip that I have for you, now that it might be too late, is if your kids are short, then and your counter is high, you want to make sure that your kids are standing up on a step stool or a chair or something, a step ladder or something, because if the dough is at a good angle for them and they're not having to reach up to knead it, then that's going to be a lot easier on their arms and their strength. So if they can push down as they're kneading, that's not going to wear them out as much. So, or if you want to wear them out, put it way up high. I'm just kidding. Okay, so now our dough is nice and smooth, and it's ready to put in the pan. And we're gonna let it rise for 30 minutes now. So one thing that you can do, a lot of the recipes for bread in a bag will tell you to use mini loaf pans. And so at this point you would cut it in half and put half in each pan. But like I said, I'm making it in a bigger pan, so I'm just gonna roll it in kind of a log and put it in my pan. And I'm not sure if I said this earlier or not, but at this point, you could even, sometimes when I've really not wanted to go to the store, I've actually made my own hamburger buns or hot dog buns. And you can just make it in that shape and put it on a baking sheet and do it that way too. So that's definitely doable. All right, I'm just gonna kind of roll it around in the pan right now to give it a little bit of a coating of oil to help it to not dry out while it rises. And then we're gonna actually brush it again, or actually I'm just gonna spray it when it comes time to bake. So right now I'm going to let this rise for 30 minutes, and the recipe says to put a towel over the top of it. I'm actually going to use a damp towel. This is one that I used on another loaf of bread, so we don't really have to pause our video. So this one is going to rise for 30 minutes with this damp towel over the top, and this is what it will look like after about 30 minutes. It's been a little bit more than 30 minutes. So I'm going to take this, and you can brush it with melted butter, or you can brush it with olive oil, but I'm actually just going to spray it because you don't want to push too hard on this because it's spent time rising, so you don't want to push down on it very hard. So I'm going to kind of set it down in the sink a bit. Give it a nice coating of oil. That's probably way too much, but that's okay. It'll be nice and tasty. All right, but yeah, melted butter tastes really good on these. All right, and then as you let it rise for 30 minutes, a good idea is to maybe set your timer for 20 minutes, and at that point turn your oven on so it'll be getting hot for about 10 minutes before you want to bake your bread. So let it rise for 20 minutes, turn on the oven to 375, and then let your bread rise for about 10 more minutes after that. Then you can take it, and like I just did, then we want to coat it with a little bit of oil or butter, and we can just put it right in the oven. And when you come back, I will have some delicious and wonderful smelling fresh baked bread for dinner. Hi, we're back, and we're ready to take our bread out of the oven. This is so exciting. It smells so wonderful. All right. Look at that, a nice golden loaf. And that's something that you can make at home. You might want to let it cool a little bit, but I'm going to cut into it just to show you. this lovely, lovely loaf. And look how this gorgeous bread, look at that nice springy bread in the middle. Oh, one way that it's good to, okay, I want you to listen closely. So as the bread's baking, if you're not sure if it's done or not, give it a little thump. And if you hear that hollow little thumping sound, that means it is done. In Matthew 4:4, Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So just remember that bread is delicious, but God's word is better. Okay. Bye. Have fun.